Radicalism is a worldview that fundamentally does not accept the universe as a proper and good order. In a radical worldview, the human world is a reflection, as in a mirror, of the essence of being. Existence is a principle hostile to the spirit, representing the antithesis of the divine plan. Being and the great being are synonymous, impersonal and personal aspects of Satan. Elements of a radical worldview are shared with political Islam and other religious ideologies emanating from the Abrahamic root. For example, it is worth noting the deep hatred of the priestless Old Believers Orthodox Christian sect for the authorities and the official society. The state for priestless Old Believers is an instrument of the Antichrist, in Islam, Dajjal. The entire society, in their opinion, is at the mercy of the Antichrist, and the support of any government is a step towards strengthening the position of the Antichrist on earth. It should be noted that in this, priestless Old Believers went further than even modern radical Islam, which still dreams of a Sharia statehood coexisting peacefully with Kufr, provided that the latter refuses aggression against Muslims. Today, Muslims are unaware that the political goals and objectives of global Islam are rooted at the metaphysical level, in the triangle of conflict between the Almighty, Adam and Satan, who refused to bow before Adam, but reprimanded the Creator for himself the right to lead people astray throughout history. Political Islam cannot follow the example of the Jews, who rely on the category of galat in their attitude to the outside world. For Jews, life in dispersion means life in an airless and lifeless space, in relation to which only predatory actions are appropriate. Muslims cannot go this way and create a ghetto, whether it be a caliphate or black quarters of European megacities. The task of Muslims is stated in the Quran, to fight until all religion on the earth will belong to Allah. This does not mean, as naive or unscrupulous non-Muslims think, forcible conversion of everyone to Islam. But this means the demolition of the world order in its deepest metaphysical foundations. In other words, we cannot speak only of the struggle against imperialism, colonialism, and local forms of national oppression. In short, Islam cannot confine itself to the revolutionary platform of the liberal left, be it Trotskyists, anarchists, or Che Guevarians of whatever kind. Companionship with revolutionary-minded liberals is occasionally possible if it fits into the format of Islamic strategies at the moment in a given place. However, Islam cannot be socialist just as it cannot be capitalist. Socialism is the cult of society as a magic machine capable of generating an excess of material wealth and nurturing each of its members, like a shepherd cherishes a sheep. All forms of oppression for Islam, colonialism, imperialism, comprador control in the interests of Kufa, through nationalist dictatorships and the like, all this is only a peripheral toolkit of the main enemy, the great being, whose shadow on earth is human society as such. Society for political Islam is not something formed from below through some kind of social contract. This is always and initially an extra-human factor, the evolution of which leads to the disappearance of man as a sovereign autonomous personality. From below, by the initiative of real people, fraternal communities are formed, which, according to the plan of the Almighty, are cells of resistance of the spirit that opposes the global system. Islam is a strategy of the spirit. It has a pronounced, strictly confessional side, which is certainly significant for those who are inside the Islamic community. However, there is also a political ideology that is not expressed in strictly confessional terminology and which can be the foundation of the political philosophy of a non-Muslim who has challenged the system. Such a political ideology of radicalism, which, despite the inevitable internal anti-secularity, is, for operational reasons, non-confessional in nature, is based on four cornerstone concepts that are closely related to each other. Each of these four concepts is something originally provocative, thrown as a challenge, so that the radical masters each of these concepts and at the same time gives it a different authentic content. These are the four cornerstone concepts: death, violence, pain, justice. Death. From the point of view of political radicalism, death is the antithesis of doom. Doom is the abolition of a phenomenon, be it an animal, a person, or, for example, a masterpiece of painting. Death is a spiritual phenomenon which is associated with the presence of the spirit of the God, at the human level. Death is the end of the human, moreover, it is the end of the existent, which becomes the exit to the incomprehensible abyss of the divine plan. As long as a person is alive, death within him acts as a witnessing consciousness, forming his true here presence. However, as soon as the outer phenomenological shell of a person ceases to function, he perishes. This here presence inside him returns to the abyss of the incomprehensible, which in no way can be identified with nothingness, non-existence or absence. This is what it means to return to Allah. From this abyss of the incomprehensible, the possessors of death will be brought into personal existence a second time, resurrected for judgment. Death for the political radical is the end of a homogeneous here being, after which begins something that is not like nothing. Violence is the form in which reality interacts with a mortal being. Our environment is violence. Society is, of course, all-pervading violence. The destructive, denying energy of the homogeneous tends to cover up any hint of a puncture, reaching the final. Ultimately, being commits violence against consciousness. And this is what is called human veil. The political radical seeks to remove the monopoly of violence from existence in order to assign violence to consciousness. Violence has an incomparable energy potential, which, being withdrawn from the great being, turns into the all-burning energy of love. For pure love in its divine foundation is a continuous sacrifice and at the same time a continuous stepping over yourself. Violence is that secret gold of reality, for the right to possess which there is a constant battle between being and consciousness. Pain is a manifestation of the direct impact of being as such on a human being. This influence always manifests itself as a burning fire. Existence burns with fire both bodies and souls. Therefore, physical pain and mental pain have the same nature, the ultimate existential experience of the destructive flame. After the victory of the Adamic heritage, a particle from the spirit of the God Most High, invested in Adam, over the great being, the hell-fire will, on the contrary, be the flame of the victorious consciousness which will scorch and burn everything plunged into the hell, that is, everything that was true to being, and not the spirit in the hereafter. For the political radical, pain is a guiding beacon, for he is looking for an encounter with pure being in order to fight him. Pain is evidence of the great confrontation between the spirit and the anti-spirit. That is why, for the radical, pain is a stigma of anti-comfort, a denial of sleep, a challenge to clay humanity which is drugged by its own existence. Justice. For the vast majority of critics of society, justice has a meaning exactly the opposite of what it means for a genuine radical. The human masses lived and live in poverty. They are deprived of the level of material wealth that is available to their jailers, not to mention their overlords. The levels of elite consumption change from ancient Rome to the modern West, but the deprivation of the lower classes practically remains the same, and in many places it is increasing as, for example, in India after the arrival of the British. This deprivation in itself is not pain in that pure existential substratum that we spoke about above. This is not a meeting with being, which burns with fire. Rather, it is a mirror negative of pain, a kind of cool shadow of that sizzling possibility that can fall on people at any moment. People respond to poverty by creating criminal structures that challenge the established practice of sharing wealth. Thus, they invite pain into the core of their subhuman everyday life. It is pain that distinguishes the space of armed crime from the vegetation of ordinary clochards. For the political radical, however, justice has nothing to do with the distribution of wealth. The political radical does not aim to ask or even force the rulers of life to share their comfort with the poor and downtrodden. Both comfort and material benefits for a political radical are attributes of an extra-conscious existence. Justice for a political radical is always only meaning. What is meaning? This is the end of the bad infinity. This is the end of the absurd. It is a rupture of the endless web of lies from which reality is woven, which is nothing more than a system of descriptions. Meaning is rooted in the transcendent redemptive power of finalism, which unconditionally puts an end to everything immanent, everything self-identical, and opens the door to where everything known has disappeared. Everything that exists is created only in order to testify with itself, the existence is not the God, God is different in relation to everything that is given in the boundless possibility. This means that the revelation itself about the God, who cannot be perceived, understood and experienced by beings, this revelation itself is already an absolute finale. It is death as consciousness that perceives this message of the finale and discovers it for itself as a redeeming meaning. This is absolute justice, because thanks to this covenant with the Spirit of the God, the believer is connected with the providential plan, in which he is an instrument. It is through this that the triumph of consciousness, the true oppressed over being the true oppressor, is accomplished.